Amina, could you just comment on just like the TLDR of why to you it's definitely not a positive signal and potentially a negative signal of any kind?
Yeah, and it is a hot take and it's a hard conversation, but the truth of how we think about it internally is like you want to go after people who are not always looking. And now again, there are certain situations, right? There are people who have been laid off. There are certain specific types of teams that have been really impacted, and I understand that's the way that you're promoting yourself. But typically when you're a recruiter and typically when you're looking for folks, you're like, who are the best people I know? The best people I know are not always looking for a new job. And you want to go after them and you want to have to convince them to come and join you. Whether that's, and again, that's like not always the case. That is a thought process, that is a dialogue that you have. And so it is a hot take, but open to work can sometimes seem like you're desperate. Not saying that you are, but that can be the perception. And so you want to be able to set yourself up more of having your profile put together in the right way, than it is like having the open to work banner and doing better messaging and getting out in your network. I also very, very much like plus 1000, Nolan, is like career trajectory is one of the most important things that a recruiter or a hiring manager or a CEO is looking for when they're looking at somebody that you want to hire. You want to show that you can continue to take more on in the role that you're in. You also want to minimize short stints, right? You want to show that you are committed to a company, that you can grow with a company, you can grow within a company, and that even when a company has like hard times, things are more challenging, you're willing to stick it out. Not always the case. There are certain situations that things happen, it's difficult, you've been laid off, or the company went under, or there were situations. But if you have multiple short stints, that will be seen as a red flag.
I will just continue to press the like positioning piece of this because I think there are realities of our career stories that are true. Maybe we had a short stint. I believe that you are almost always benefited by controlling the narrative. Whatever the truth is can be colored on top of. And if there is a short stint in your history or two or three, you have the opportunity to articulate
Yep.
why and what that was. Maybe you went on sabbatical because you were burnt out. I don't necessarily think, and maybe you have some color around the calculus there and how motivated you are and recharged to get back into work. I think that might do more work than what one might assume or imagine if there's just no context provided. So you can control the narrative on your LinkedIn profile and resume. You can control the narrative in your interview process, but be prepared to speak on these. And I would say you should assume that the looker, the audience, is assuming probably they're looking for reasons to rule you out, not rule you in. And so
Exactly.
assume negative intent in a weird way. I know that sounds kind of bad. And it's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's because there is a tsunami of options from the recruiting team standpoint and a very limited bandwidth to sift through. So if there's any reason to just, even if finding a needle in the haystack is a hard problem for recruiting teams and they have to make quick decisions. So if there's any reason to rule you out, there's always going to be another person on behind you. And so don't give that reason. Get ahead of
Yeah.
it. Be proactive.
Yeah. And by the way, a short stint is considered basically anything under 2 years. But if there's a sequence of, between you're leaving between 2 and 3 years, that can also be considered short stints. And the reason why, just so people understand, is like building companies takes a long time. And if you have like somebody once said to me, nothing really happens in less than 4 years. Like you really haven't seen anything. You haven't like lived through enough adversity. You haven't lived through enough challenges. Like you haven't seen enough of the movie. And so that's what the recruiting team is thinking. By the way, the inverse of that is also true. Like my wife's been at Google for 12 years. Recruiters don't ping her anymore. She's been there too long. And there's a narrative about her that like, oh, she can only survive at big tech company. And so both ends of the spectrum are true. Just to build off what Troy was saying, your job is to explain that before I actually even talk to you. Like you have to be able to explain to me with your profile what's going on here. And so, kind of thinking about which hat you're wearing, I find that oftentimes candidates are just wearing this candidate hat. And when they show up, they're just like, well, pick me, pick me. And instead, what they should be doing is trying to put on their employer hat and thinking from an employer's perspective, which is, okay, this person has, 2 stints in a row to where they've been at the job for less than 2 years. You need to proactively explain to the employer in your profile in some unique way what was going on there.
Find silver lining if there is and highlight it. The question to Nolan's point, I think the example is if there's another candidate that has roughly similar skills but doesn't have those short stints right next in the stack, why would the employer pick you with the short stints, right? So assume there is one of those next in the stack and position yourself against that.